It was just talking. You know, he can't really do much of anything else, so talking is the only way.
Right back to Green, kicks it out. Butler, the fake. Draymond Green settles, fires, and hits the three. To sit. We're real. Go to the second round.
What are you looking forward to most of this upcoming season?
Definitely going back to the playoffs and going further in the playoffs to go versus the Warriors. I want to play the Warriors. I want to get to the Warriors. Wherever they at, I want to get to them.
Gotcha. Why the Warriors so much?
I mean, because Draymond talks so much trash. That's pretty much the only reason.
Is this the dagger? Congratulations to the Golden State Warriors, the only team led by one of the top players of the previous decade to make it to the second round of the NBA playoffs. Not only that, they're the only remaining team of the four in California that's still active. Hey, what's happening, everyone? This is Swish Culture. After 7 grueling matchups that included 2 losses in a row to Houston, Steph Curry and the Warriors have summoned a first-class ticket to send the second-seeded Houston Rockets off to an early vacation. The Phoenix Suns super team led by Durant bowed out without even making the playoffs. The Lakers ran out of gas after facing the Timberwolves, with Ant-Man crashing the Doncic honeymoon in... Hey, Shannon, how many games did the Lakers lose in?
Lakers in 5.
The LA Clippers, led by the Claw and the Beard, 2 guys who take themselves entirely too seriously, lost to the one guy who couldn't take himself too seriously, the Joker. I heard they don't talk because loose lips sink ships. Doesn't matter, it was all over when Russ unloaded the clips in 6. Finally, Giannis with his blood clot teammate, Damian Lillard, who came back a bit earlier than expected, tore his Achilles midway through the series before the Pacers put on a 5-finger smackdown. Halliburton's dad was so excited, he went and got himself banned from all future Pacers home games. As it turns out, it is not a good idea for parents of players to storm the court and confront their kids' opponents. Thus ends round 1 of the playoffs. Are the Warriors for real after taking the entire 7 games to beat the Rockets? With only 1 day of rest, can they take on the Timberwolves, who had enough time to go to Cancun and back? Let's find out how both the 6th and 7th seeds match up after both teams having caused upsets to the 2nd and 3rd seeds in this year's playoffs. Before that, however, be sure to like the video and subscribe to Swish Culture for the most analytical and entertaining NBA content on the planet. Now get ready. You're about to get
Hey, buddy, go! Jimmy Butler, everybody! Buddy! Go! Jimmy Butler! Jimmy Butler! Buddy! Tell him you're not Robert no more. He's Alfred. His name is Butler. Can you put it?
What can you say about Buddy's performance tonight?
Yeah, Jimmy.
Buddy was huge. We know the type of basketball player that he is. And he's a tough cover for sure whenever he's making shots. But he made so many right plays on the defensive side of the ball, getting the ball where it needed to go. Buddy was really big for us.
It was all fun and games at the end of Game 7, when the Warriors finally made it to the second round after what was a nail-biting experience. The last 3 games of the series were shocker after shocker after shocker. Steve Kerr's actions in Game 5 raising white flags and eyebrows at the same time, as a lot of fans were confused as to why he didn't put the starters back in the game when the Warriors were down 13 with 5 minutes left to play. The golden rule is approximately 10-point differential with 2 minutes left in the game is still worth fighting for. That means 13 points in 5 minutes in a playoff series against a higher-seeded candidate presents a situation where you give it your best shot. It didn't seem, however, despite the fact that this was a closeout game, like Steve Kerr was interested. Possibly because the team was up 3-1 and conceding a second game to the Rockets only puts them at Game 6. Things got chippy near the end with Pat Spencer and Trace Jackson-Davis getting into a spat with Alperen Şengün. However, that was a very strange turn of events that likely had Steve Kerr scratching his head. Considering the Rockets had it going early in the game, going up by 30 points, Steve likely didn't believe his starters had enough juice and likely needed the rest to come back and fight another day.
At one point, I think at halftime, their effective field goal percentage was 95%. I've never seen that in my life, so you're not winning that game. I didn't have them ready to play, clearly. I think they were 13 for 13 from the line after the first quarter. They took it to us. They were awesome tonight, and we got to be better.
What was the conversation at half? And, I mean, did you know you were probably going to pull the plug pretty quick?
Yeah, I wasn't going to chase, this game, obviously, with Game 6 coming up in, 48 hours. I talked to Draymond. I said, what do you think? He said 5 minutes. And so we gave the starting group the first 5 or 6 minutes, and we kind of had, unless we had made a huge run, kind of had it in mind that we would, pull the plug.
Another day would be 2 days later, and Game 6 of the first round back at Chase Center. I wouldn't say guys were concerned just yet. My read on this was that the Warriors expected to win this game and probably didn't come as prepared as they should have been. So what happened in Game 6? Both Steph Curry and Jimmy combined for 16 of 40 from the field. Something was different, however. Instead of the usual starting lineup, Kerr went with GP2 and Buddy Hield to complement Draymond, Steph, and Jimmy. A bit of a drastic change considering they had been playing so well with Moody and Pods. What drove this change? In order to understand this, we'll have to go back to Game 4. This was where we first saw the starting lineup change. Now yes, it changed for Game 3 as well, but that was because Jimmy was out. Game 4 saw Buddy Hield enter the starting lineup to replace Moses Moody, who would hit a shooting slump. This was of course agonizing at times because if Buddy's not hitting his threes, he's not really giving you much of anything, right? Well, as it turns out, Jalen Green is fairly good at taking himself out of the game, so it tends to make Buddy's job a bit easier in guarding him. This allows Steve to take certain risks with playing Buddy. After shooting 5 of 11 from 3 in Game 3, this must have triggered Steve Kerr, who was likely waiting on that moment to get some spacing for Curry or to utilize his gravity to get some better looks. After that coming out game of his, Hield went on to start in both Games 4 and 5 with Curry and Pods, Curry utilizing a 3-guard lineup until Pods was replaced for GP2 in Game 6. A smooth switching of both the Warriors' 2-guard and small forward positions. So let me break down exactly what happened. Alperen Sengun isn't exactly a great rim protector. The Warriors wanted to get him in action so that they could exploit that particular weak point in the Rockets' defense. These actions would include Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and it could include the split action, inverted PNR, or the short roll. Ime Udoka figured this out and, thinking swiftly, hid Sengun on Moses Moody. So instead of having Sengun guard Draymond at the 5, making him vulnerable to these split actions, he would guard Moses Moody, who doesn't really have that 2-man game with Steph Curry. Steve Kerr then countered with Buddy Hield in place of Moody, who has a quick trigger and can shoot in motion. So instead of getting Sengun in action to be exploited by Steph Curry, he can instead be exploited by Hield. It worked to some degree in Games 3 and 4. However, the Rockets again countered, and by Game 5,
Van Vliet, he'll pull up. He'll score! Timeout Warriors! The Rockets have extended the lead to 18!
This gave the Warriors problems, as the Rockets would go on runs to which the Warriors could not consistently respond. In Game 6, Kerr decided to take Pods out of the starting lineup and instead opted for GP2 for the 2-man game with Steph Curry. This again would allow Steph Curry a roller to the rim. However, that was going to be tough as GP2 is only 6'2", and the Rockets have 2 6'11" giant redwoods in the paint. When this didn't work, Steve attempted to get Adams out of the game by fouling him, which worked the first time around in Game 5, but the Rockets still came away with the win. The second time, however, Udoka locked in and kept Adams in the game despite the fouls, fought through it, and the Rockets yet again pulled through. It looked like the Warriors were stuck, unable to beat the Twin Tower lineup, something they might have to face if both the Warriors and Cavs make the finals, or even the Western Conference Finals with OKC's Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. Draymond was extremely frustrated with the situation and kept racking up techs and flagrants, somehow managing to stay on the floor. Will these come to bite the team later? They went into Game 7 without any answers to these questions. However, did they come out of Game 7 with a solution after the win? Golden State was at a loss as to the counter for the Rockets' Twin Tower lineup.
After losing Game 6 at home, y'all had to be kind of a little shell-shocked. How did y'all regroup? So what did Coach say, and what did the veteran guys say to you, your young guys?
You know, yesterday when we get to Houston, we had a very emotional meeting led by Draymond and Steph and Jimmy. And from then, I was just locked in.
People I trust them most had, we had some heart-to-hearts after last game. And I pouted way too much last game. So I spent the last 2 days embarrassed. What I gave to the game, what I gave to the world, I was embarrassed. And so I've been dying since the last game ended to get out on the floor and prove who I am. But with the same fire, same tenacity, but poise. And I think I delivered that and gave our guys something to follow.
While they didn't exactly discuss strategy, Kerr responded to a query on Jonathan Kuminga's availability. Despite getting DNP since Jimmy's Game 4 return, Steve Kerr had this to say.
Is Jonathan Kuminga on the table to play?
100% he's on the table. This. We've kind of found a formula here in the latter part of the season, and then obviously the last 2 games have gone very poorly. We have to assess everything. We feel like we got a great chance to go down there and win Game 7.
While it seemed inevitable that JK would play at that point, this meant one of two things. The Warriors have run out of time and are grasping at straws and would try to win by panicking and running the offense through JK. Or Steve Kerr is going to rely on Old Faithful, ride with the vets and simply continue to do what he has been doing, which is to keep JK out of the rotation and play guys that fit within the style and scheme he believes is necessary to win. Neither ended up being the case. Steve actually ended up putting JK in the game for 2 short stints totaling 7 minutes. While he didn't play terribly, it was within range of what you could expect for someone in his situation. He showed that he could penetrate the zone defense, but couldn't finish. An unfortunate turnover when passing to Jimmy calling for the ball, and that would see him get taken out of the game. This has been the bane of his career, which is the limited room for mistakes compared to his peers. Regardless of the reasoning, Kerr didn't trust his offense and quickly reverted. To keep things in check defensively, however, Steve deployed his own defense, which punished the Rockets, who shot just 6 of 18 from 3. Even though the Warriors weren't scoring, neither were the Rockets. But then something happened. Buddy Hield went on a heater.
Being in the zone is very spiritual, just you and that rim and the net and the ball, and you just figuring it out. And sometimes you put anything up and it just goes in, but just being at peace with your game. Jimmy didn't say nothing to me yet. I'm not gonna get on Jimmy yet. I'm gonna keep it calm. But today I had to fill this role in for them in the first half. He was slacking, but we all weathered the storm, and it was a great team win collectively. Everybody they did everything in spurts, and we finally get out the zone.
With 6 threes in the first half, Hield was knocking down every shot he took, forcing the Rockets to abandon their zone defense down 12 at the half. With his shooting, the Warriors went on a run from which the Rockets simply never recovered. After abandoning their zone defense, their man-to-man allowed Steph Curry some room to operate as he went off. From scoring just 1 bucket in the first half to scoring 19 points in the second, you could see Steph Curry clearly taking advantage and how much easier the game was when he had a secondary shooter on the floor. Buddy ended up tying the NBA's record for the most threes in a playoff Game 7 with 9 made of 11 three-point attempts. That's 3 more than the entire Rockets team. The Warriors opened up the lead on the Rockets and never looked back. They took Game 7 on the road at the Toyota Center for the 3rd time in the Steph Curry era, once again leaving opponents to be consoled by their teammates. It seems the Warriors might have found their solution when faced with their double big problem. Or did they? This could be their key to beating the Cavs. However, there is one major difference, and that is the mobility of Mobley on offense as a player that can drive. They'll need a strong wing defender who can stay in front of him on that end of the floor. At the other end, however, things should remain identical, and we'll get to the one problem that still remains. I'll pivot to the OKC Thunder matchup and point out that Chet is a threat from 3, much more so than Mobley, and can also drive the ball. This adds a level of complexity that the Warriors might not have an answer for defensively. They could counter with Quentin Post, who should be able to match up better against Chet than a behemoth like Steven Adams. At the other end of the floor, however, on offense, it'll be the same for the Warriors as the Rockets or Cavs. The one problem the Warriors will still have, however, is one that Kerr has been relying on and might not be there reliably. That would be Buddy's shooting, which is what really got the Warriors out of Game 7 against Houston. Without that, the zone defense would have likely stayed, and without that secondary shooter, this might have been a rather different video. But it's not just his shooting. The fact that he put up 33 points was also a pretty big deal. While the Warriors were able to keep the Rockets under 90 points, they needed a third scorer alongside Butler and Curry to get the job done. I've said this before a number of times, and I'll keep repeating it. If the Warriors don't get consistent third option scoring, things could get very dicey. But it's hard to argue with Steve Kerr's strategy with 4 rings coaching Steph Curry. This was an incredible win for the Warriors, and going up against the Timberwolves is going to be an interesting matchup. With the ease at which they dispatched the Lakers, it could be a matchup nightmare due to the sheer size difference. The fact that they've been shooting at a high clip just makes them all the more dangerous. Not to mention the fact that the Warriors, who are depending on 3 guys 35 years or older, are just coming off a Game 7 with 1 day of rest, compared to the Timberwolves having 1 week after a 5-game series led by a 23-year-old with length, size, and shooting at his disposal. It'll be a doozy, but don't let me have the last word. I want to know what you guys think of how this series with the Rockets went. Was it what you thought it would be? Do the Warriors stand a chance against the Timberwolves? I think if it goes to a Game 7, I'm putting my bets on Golden State. They're just too good in those situations. But post your thoughts in the comments below and let me know if you agree. Just be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all your notifications so you don't miss any of my latest uploads. Thanks for watching. Till next time, swish!